Hello, everybody, and welcome to Love You, Live You podcast with myself, host Kathlyn Heim. Today, I have a guest. His name is Michael Weiss. He's a former law enforcement officer. And we're going to talk a little bit today about the social climate, a little bit about police misconduct, kind of pick Mike's brain on, how he feels about the situation. But first, Mike, welcome to the show. And I would like to...
Thank you.
You're welcome. I would like you to introduce yourself and let the viewers know your history, all the accomplishments that you've had, which are more than just the police department.
Well, sure, and thank you, Kathy, for having me on. It's a real honor. As they may not know, you and I have known each other for a while, but we kind of lost contact for many years, and here we are. So I appreciate it. My caveat before I do this is sometimes when a person gives their background experience, it almost feels like they're saying, look at me, I'm an expert. And I've always told people that beware of experts. I don't claim to be an expert in anything. Life is fluid, things are fluid. So I do have an extensive background in a lot of things, but that's not to imply that I'm the guy with all the answers. So basically I did almost 13 years with the Los Angeles Police Department after getting out of the Army. And after an untimely exit from that due to some injuries that I sustained, I was working as a federal agent with the Inspector General's office for Amtrak and National Passenger Rail, and we were doing fraud-based type things. And I ultimately ended up moving to the DC office to do not counter, but an anti-terrorism thing, put a unit together, and did that and traveled all over the world, and then took over their firearms and tactics unit, and I ran that. And in between, I've had my own businesses, private investigation, firearms instruction. And here I am, fully retired.
Wow, you've done a lot since we last worked together. For those of you who are listening, Mike and I actually worked together as Los Angeles police officers back in the Hollywood division back in the early 90s, early to mid 90s. So it's good to see you. Now, okay, so here's the meat and potatoes of why I wanted to interview you. You have a lot of experience, not just with law enforcement and other areas as well. And you're somewhat removed from it now. You're not in the middle of it. So I feel like you can speak candidly, honestly, openly to our viewers about your views and your opinions on what's going on today. We recently had the murder by cop of George Floyd. And there's been a lot of civil unrest and a lot of just a lot going on, similar to 1992 riots, not exactly the same. So I'm just wondering, what is your feeling on what's going on right now? What thoughts?
Like everybody listening, I'm sure, my feelings are all over the map, and they've been that way. And I can sum up the beginning of it when. Well, let me back up and say that I have my own YouTube channel, and on that channel we discuss current politics and such. And I'm not saying I'm a prophet, but for many, many months I've been saying that America is really one minority involved police killing away from absolute, national meltdown. And sure enough, here we are. I mean, but I never could have imagined it would be this egregious. And I don't mean the response; I mean the actual murder. When I saw that on the news, the murder of Mr. Floyd, I got to be honest. I mean, being pro cop and pro law enforcement, having worn a uniform almost my entire life, one uniform or the other, I try very hard to maybe not justify, but understand when police officers kill in controversial situations. Somebody's reaching for something, and of course, you get a lot of emotional response, especially if it's a white cop and a minority. But I can typically figure a way out to understand where the cop's head was. In this particular case, not trying to be emotional, I actually tear up talking about this because this was so egregious that I sat there with my mouth hanging open. And for the first time in my life, almost, I was completely at a loss to understand and make sense of what it was I was looking at, because I knew what I was looking at. I was looking at the murder of a man who there was nothing going on. And, a lot of times when there's video of some police killing, a natural response from especially pro cops and open-minded people is, well, we don't know what happened before that video started. That's a really good response. And that I've used that many times. And this was so bad and so egregious, it didn't matter to me. at all. I mean, if Mr. Floyd had been running around, with a machete attacking, nuns, it didn't justify what I was looking at on the videos. And I saw a guy with his hands in his pockets who just was not responding to the crowd and to Mr. Floyd's pleas for to get off his neck. He died. So I was flabbergasted and I was angry. Also, as you know, in the business of law enforcement, unlike just about any other business on earth, when one of us does something bad, every one of us has to pay for it, whether we're retired or not. So nobody hates a bad cop more than a good cop, as it goes. So I was extremely upset about it. And then that took a turn because the protesting that went on in the streets, that was expected. First of all, I was wondering why he wasn't arrested so quick. Like everybody else, I was thinking, hey man, let's lock this guy up, man. I mean, this is not a question. But the protests began and I was all for it, 100% for it. Yeah, this is, I'm a constitutionalist, man. And there's nothing more beautiful than a crowd of people, no matter how big, that are speaking their voice out. That's why I went in the military. It's why I've worn uniform. I've sworn to protect that Constitution. And then it started going sideways. And when it began to be windows breaking and looting, I began to get upset, and I didn't want to draw any of my feelings, and I hated to see other people that, we tend to associate with like-minded people, and I could see it. I could feel the vibe that it was going away from the murder of Mr. Floyd to what the hell's going on here. And then it became violent, and then people were getting hurt, and then somebody died in a brutal way. And, it's my blood pressure has gone up, and my lack of empathy for what I see happening, because I think this is not all about Mr. Floyd anymore. Some of it is, but I draw a huge distinction between protesting and rioting. And there's many people that have tried to convince me that I have no right to tell somebody how they should protest or how they should grieve. And I disagree with it strongly. I'm a member of this human race, and I live on this planet, and I've raised 7 kids, and I've helped people and seen good people and bad people. And I know one thing, I don't know a lot of things, but I do know that we're all in it together. No matter how much division is injected by other things, whether it's political or people with agendas, we're all living here together. And I don't have any place for people that want a society without rule of law. Unfortunately, the way the human construct works, the strong will devour the weak if there is not something separating them. And in this case, whether we hate cops or love cops, it literally is a very thin, tenuous blue line that separates people being able to go to work and go get a cup of coffee from absolute pandemonium and a dog-eat-dog world.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And, I could go on a whole nother episode about that. But I'm curious right now, because this did involve police misconduct, and you're talking about that, that very fine, thin blue line.
Yes.
And also you said something that resonated with me. Nobody hates a bad cop more than a good cop. And I would tend to agree. I don't think anybody could, because it's betrayal, and it's actually tarnishing your own badge. And now, like you said, if one cop is bad and they're, when that comes to light, we all pay the price. And it's unfortunately there is a lot of stereotypes, around cops and, their excessive force. So tell me, Mike, in your career, excessive force, have you witnessed excessive force during your years as a police officer?
I have, and before I get into an example of that, I just want to get this out as we talk about. You had mentioned stereotypes, and look, stereotypes, no matter who you're talking about, most of them are true, and this is my opinion. Stereotypes don't just fall out of thin air, and so you hear a lot of things about cops, and some of it is true. But I give an analogy, regarding the one cop and doing something, we all got to pay for it. Excuse me. And the analogy is that if you take any chain restaurant in the entire country, a Denny's, a Jack in the Box, whatever, and there's some footage played on the news of a guy spitting in the food or urinating in the French fries, that's a news story, and people are really upset about it, and they get mad about it, but they do not hold all cooks and all Denny's or Jack in the Box responsible. Cops, there is, and I've said this since I was wearing the uniform, and I would try to quell certain things either during or pre-post or during or post Rodney King. I mean, there was a lot of discussion between citizens and cops. There is no factory that is spitting out the perfect cop. When you have a department that's bad or a police culture that seems to be taking a turn for the worse, you only have to look as far as outside your window, because the cops are coming from society and they're a direct reflection of society. When we have a society that shits all over each other, pardon my French, and we recruit from that society, is it really a big surprise when we start seeing guys and misconduct go up? So that's one, a little bit more of an esoteric look at the overall picture. Certainly there's a lot of sub conversations within that. Now, when I was a kid, growing up, there was a movie called Serpico. A lot of young people won't. I don't even know if you remember that. You might be too young for that. Serpico. And did you ever hear that? I think it was Al Pacino played it.
No.
Now, it was a very popular book, and it became a very popular movie. And if you ought to check it out, actually, I think you'd like it, because it was and it was a true story. It was a righteous event where a New York cop, and in those days, the New York Police Department, they go through changes, and that was a very corrupt department where people were taking payoffs and blah, blah, blah. And everybody was in on the game, and Serpico comes along, that was his last name, and he ain't playing that game. And when he turned against those cops and started pointing them out, they went after him. They wouldn't come to his backup calls. He'd be fighting for his life, and they'd just sit there drinking coffee while he was dying. And, they wanted him dead. So there was, I bring that up because there has been a culture, and I'm just going to be honest, because my downfall is I'm brutally honest. I'm not always right, but what I tell you is what I believe, and it's not always for my benefit. And there is a code of conduct, and I hear it coming at me wrongfully, though, by a lot of younger people. Hey, cops don't ever, they just lie for each other. Some of that's true. I can tell you that in my time. And remember, police work is evolving. We went from Serpico to look at New York City, which was a nightmare. And up in my lifetime, I would never go to New York City. And by the time I grew up and got old, oh my God, it's a family play. Go down there, and it's beautiful. I love it. So that was through change, and the police department was managed properly. There's New Orleans has had some bad history. People turning up missing out in the swamps. This is just reality. You don't have to like it. There's probably some New Orleans cop that's going to get his feelings hurt. This is just real history here. So when I was growing up, or when I was new on the police department, I was trained by people that were Vietnam veterans, and these were some hardcore guys that worked back in the 70s when you could shoot a fleeing felon. It didn't matter. If a guy was committing a felony, you could shoot him in the back. That was legit. We were choking people out, even in my time. And these things adjust. So the police departments are a living, breathing chunk of society that must evolve. And sometimes you got to knock on them and protest, and you got to go and change laws and rules. And that's good stuff, because Rodney King, I hold the Rodney King incident responsible for a lot of negativity that happened with the police department, but I also hold it responsible for a lot of positive changes. Nothing makes me I'm very happy to see the technology of the body camera. And when people say, wow, imagine all the shit that went on before the cameras, hey, that hurts my feelings, but they're not wrong. They're not wrong. Now, I would give my life for a cop just like I would for some stranger. I love the concept of people willing to die for people they don't know. And I was one, and you were one, and that's not some stretch. That's what we did. But mixed in there, there were power trippers, and there were people, and there was misconduct, and cops being arrested for everything. When I was on the job, there were cops arrested, and LAPD had a reputation around the country as being a pretty good department, as a premier department. Now, that the people in the bad neighborhoods wouldn't tell you that, because they also had a very rough reputation. And there was a lot of it was a different era. We were taught by guys that didn't take any crap, and subsequently, a good example was other cops they'd come and do ride-alongs from Ohio or something. They couldn't believe that when you turn on the lights and the car stopped, the people literally put their hands up and turn on they'd get out of the car and do what they're told, because in other parts of the country, they just take off running. But you didn't do that with LAPD. And there was a reason for that. You know, we had unwritten rules. You know, if you run, you're probably going to get slapped. Now, is that a right thing to do? I'm going to leave it up to the viewer to decide, because we can see the results of that policing versus the results of what's happening now. And I'm not the guy with the answer. I do know that when I wore the badge, the bad guys hated cops, but they had a lot of respect for cops. Some people might say, well, that's fear. Hey, whatever gets you into that jail safely and gets me home at night, that I'll take it. You know, the good guys had no clue what we were doing until the show Cops came out. And, you know, I was one of the first guys to ride with the cops. They did an article about that.
Oh yeah, I rode with cops.
Yeah, that was, and now you see what an influx of, you know, it's funny in a time when cops are such a focus. You know, one of the most popular things besides ghost adventures and things that I love watching are police reality shows like Live PD. I mean, so people are inherently and naturally infatuated with cops, including cops. I get people all the time. They say, you know, when a police car gets behind me, I get all sweaty and nervous. What did I do? I got news for you. When I was on my way home and I was a cop, active duty, and a CHP, a highway patrol, got behind me, my initial thought was, what'd I do? Why is he jacking me? It's a natural thing, because it's an unusual position that's kept societies together, whether it was the Roman centurions who people feared but were enforcers of the law, and you've always got to have something in place. And I know I'm digressing. Your original question was misconduct. So in my day, there were certain things that you, and I watched it change, by the way, and I like to think I had a little something to do with some of my little divisional changes in these areas. One of them was, and I use this to illustrate the culture of police work, and it's hard to break these things, but they are breaking. People that are watching, I watched it, and they're breaking. We have to give it time. We're not going to change this tonight. It's not going to happen, but it does work. And an example is when a police officer was shot and killed, which happened all the time. It was completely taboo when I was a new cop to question what he did wrong. It was that was like an insult. You never said, well, why did he do this? And I remember when I first did that, I had older guys come over and say, man, that's not your place to question what he did. He's dead now. You're going to talk shit about him. And, you know, when I finally got off probation and I was able to stand up in front of roll call and give my two, and you know, I'm a talker, Kathy, you know how I am. I didn't give a crap. I'd get up there and say, hey, you know what, this was a mantra of mine. The very last gift that Officer Smith can give us now that he's dead is to figure out why he fucked up so that none of us can do the same thing. So I'm going to look at it. And I'm going to tell you right now that he approached that car wrong, or he did this. Well, the old timers like, oh, I can't believe this guy. That's sacrilegious. Well, the same thing was going on with misconduct, to come full circle here to your question. It was taboo to burn another cop. What kind of it really, as much as people don't like it, it becomes an us against them. There are psychological reasons that Dr. Phil would be better off explaining than me, that why cops hang out with cops and not typically non-cops. Because the longer you're a cop, the more you just can't help it. You realize that, you know, people are dangerous. They're dangerous. You know, you can talk to a guy and he can look at you and talk so sweet and pretty and be planning your kidnap, rape, and homicide. That's human. That's what we are. And the more you're wading through bodies and the more you're seeing it, the more you get to understand it. So you pull close. And when you pull close, it does become a brother and a sisterhood. It becomes a family. And we know, and we always knew, that to point the finger at somebody and say, hey, man, you know, Sarge, what's his name? He did this or he did that. You are going to be outside the circle. And if you're willing to do that, good for you. I always wondered what I would do in that situation. And I mentioned to you just the other night when we reconnected, people ask me all the time, now that you're retired, Mike, come on, tell me the truth. My friends, because now my friends aren't all cops. Tell me the truth, man. You took a little bit of money from some of those drug dealers, didn't you? And I said, absolutely not. Well, I mean, you guys carried a little bit of dope to put on some guy if he was an asshole and you just wanted to get him a job. I said, absolutely not. Now, I'm not naive, and I tell people, There's no doubt in my mind that that went on. I never saw it, and here's why I think I never saw it. And if there's any cops listening, feel free to use it, because it kept me and my partner legit throughout my career. When I would work with someone for the first time, whether he had 30 years or 30 seconds, we get our shotgun, get a radio, we get in the car. Hey, I'm Mike. Hey, I'm so-and-so. I got a backup on my left rear pocket, like this. If you become a hostage, I'm going to do that. All this shit you do before you pull out. And I would say, hey, by the way, this is exactly what I said to him. Say, hey, by the way, don't take this offense, not personal. If it doesn't apply, it doesn't apply. But here's the deal. When we take someone to jail, it's because of something they did. We don't plant evidence. We don't take people to jail for shit they didn't do. We don't say, and in those days I said the N-word to the cop. We don't say that. I still feel stupid saying the N-word, but I would say, but I get it. And people, that's the way society is. They don't want me to say the word even in a description, but that's what I would say. We don't use that word. You can call people whatever you want, because there's a lot of cocksuckers out there that need to be told they're cocksuckers. And I'm the first one to do it, but we don't get racial. And if you touch a guy when he's handcuffed, and this is important to your question, if you touch a guy when he's handcuffed, I'm going to book you myself. That was just my little thing to let them know that I don't roll that way. And the way I did it was as a preemptive thing. So if they were a cop that was prone to drop the N-word all night, they wouldn't do it with me, because I just told them that's not going to happen in my car. So was I a saint? No. Did I hit somebody 5 times when I was only justified hitting them once? Absolutely. Absolutely. Did every single person that I put in prison and in jail deserve to be there? Absolutely. Did the people that I did slap 3 times or punch 5 times, did they need to be punched? No doubt about it. Maybe I should have punched them so many times. And if you're looking for saints that can control rage after a foot pursuit when your partner's knee's broken and you just ripped off half your shirt and your arm's bleeding, I've been stabbed on this job, anything you can think of, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to come up with some robots, because I ain't saying it's right. I'm just telling you that's the way it is. So my story, when I got tested, was one day I was working with a female officer. I'd say that only so that you can get the visual. And we were doing what was, we were an arrest team for undercover narcotics buy, which for the civilians out there, a team of people goes out and buys narcotics from the local drug dealer. There's signs, you've seen it on the cop shows, and somewhere off in the distance, not too far, are uniformed cops to come in and make the arrest. That was me and her, or her and I, as my grandpa would interrupt me and say. So we're sitting there, the buy goes down, okay, go in, we roll in, it's nighttime, the tackle goes down, because I was in good shape, I was an old crusty guy, and the fight was on. This guy's not going to jail, believe it or not, people. Not everybody wants to go to jail, and some of them are pretty tough when they're motivated. So here, my partner and I are struggling with him to get him handcuffed. And in the midst of it, I'm trying to put his hands together. She actually handcuffed one cuff on his wrist and one on mine. And we actually made a joke in the middle of this melee. I said, what, are you taking me to jail too? And she had to uncuff me. And this is the reality of the things that happen. Well, we get him handcuffed, and he's still face down on the ground. And I see a pair of feet come running up out of nowhere and kick him right in his face.
After he's handcuffed.
Yeah, I'm on top of him.
It matters, but it
matters.
Yeah.
But also, like you're saying, I'm kicking in the face. Who does that?
Who does that?
Who now, if you just killed my partner, I'm going to kick your teeth out if that's what I have to do to get you in custody. But kicking a guy in the face? Are you jack? I mean, over a drug deal? So that happened. And he's still struggling, and now he's struggling more because he just got kicked in the face. I look up and see who did it, and it was a civilian clothes where it was one of the narcotics guys. So he's got long hair and a beard, and he just looks like a drug guy. So we get this guy up, and when he stands up, he literally, in his heart of hearts, thinks that I kicked him in his face. And he turns around, and he's bleeding, and you can imagine, here I just fought with this guy in handcuffs. I'm trying to explain to him it wasn't me. So we put him in the car, and I go over to this officer, and I say, hey, man, whatever his name was, I know his name. I never forget his name, because I always watch my back if you're listening, because I don't forget anything either. And I said, hey, you're going to have to take care of this, man. You're going to have to clean this up and own up to it, man, because that's your problem. And he says, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, you know exactly what I'm talking about, man. You kicked that guy right in the face and he was already handcuffed. He says, hey, you're going to have to deal with that. I said, I'm not transporting this guy. He just took off. He says, do what you got to do. Man, I was furious. So in one last ditch effort, because I knew it was going to be a nuclear war, which I was ready to go into, but as still hanging on to some loyalty, when I went over to the narcotics group where they were all hanging out, and it's all these, they're not part of patrol, so we don't mix. And they knew what I was there for, and I called them out into the parking lot. And I said, hey, man, I don't know what that was. I said, hey, man, either you are going to go own up to this right now, or I'm going to do it for you. And I said, that's not debatable. And he literally looks at me with a shit-eating smirk and says, hey, do what you got to do, man. I said, I'm going to go do what I got to do. And I went right to the watch commander's office. That culminated into a nuclear bomb that divided narcotics from patrol. And one of the things that actually is hard for me to say that you know, I mean, it chokes me up thinking about it, because there is a brotherhood, and you remember that. And that's something that I loved about the Army, and it's something I loved about the police department, man. It was just such a tight thing. And here I was just dropping a wedge in there, man. And I had no idea how people would react. I'm talking about my friends. I thought, you know what? I was thinking of Serpico. That's why I brought it up. I thought, Mike, get ready, because you may be going on a roller coaster ride here. And I said, you know, my grandpa told me right is right and wrong is wrong. So I got on the roller coaster, but I was nervous. It ended up in a major trial situation where I'm in a room downtown LA. He's there with his attorneys, and they got the arrestee from prison on a video conference. And there's all this stuff going on. But when I showed up down there, as an intimidation factor, all of the narcotics guys were waiting out in the hallway just outside of this hearing room, and they weren't smiling at me. And I get there, and I got to walk through a gauntlet of these cops that hate me and want me dead because I'm testifying against their buddy. I brought these charges. And would you believe that a door opens up down the hall and in comes 3 times as many divisional uniform guys from my division who came there solely to back me up, because they knew that we were all talking about, man, that's going to be one uncomfortable day when you go down there. They came down there, hey, man, you're doing a good thing, Mike. Yeah, do the right thing, kick ass. We're proud of you, Mike, right in the face of these guys. And so, you know, that was that thing. And as it turned out, that officer did not get fired, but he took 6 months. Now, some people might go 6 months. Let me just tell you this, civilians, in the police department, in LAPD, if you take a couple days off, that's a career ender for a long time, and it's expensive. The most you can take off without getting fired is 6 months. That's the maximum. And a 6-month suspension with no paycheck, you take your badge, take your identity, and you have killed your career permanently after a 6-month. You're not going anywhere after that. So it might not seem like much to some, but that was a pretty heavy penalty. And that was that. That's that. I could go on and on, but you get the gist of what happened.
Yeah, you know what the thing is, and I'm so glad that you shared that, and I really wanted you to share that, because it is really hard. You know, you talked about how with the police department, you know, there is almost like a brotherhood, a sisterhood, fraternity, and people are, you know, cops are reluctant to turn on other cops. You know, I think many of us have had a point in time where we've had to do so. And we've done the right thing. And I know I have, and it was never comfortable. And it was the same thing. It was a division. However, you know, when I got sworn in, when I took that oath and I got that badge, it meant something to me. It really meant something to me. I came on the police department for the right reasons.
You were an excellent cop, by the way. I just want to get that out there. You were an awesome cop.
You were an awesome cop. Thank you. But the thing is, what I'm saying is I came on for the right reasons. And I'm not here to talk about the reasons I came on the police department, but I know your story, Mike. And I know when you share it, I'm going to probably start crying. So viewers, please listen, because I want you to know that everybody that comes on, you know, any law enforcement agency, be it LAPD, LA County Sheriffs, wherever you live, New Orleans, New York, everybody has a story as to why they decided to dedicate their life to serving others, protecting and serving others. And Mike, if you would share, do you mind sharing your story?
No, not at all. No,
because
no.
I love your story. You have to listen to this, please. Nobody hang up. Go ahead. Floor is yours again.
You tell me. You just stop me if because this is a story I could drag out for 6 months. I'm going to try and go as fast as I can and slow me down or speed me up as necessary.
So if you go sideways, I'm going to kind of do like a signal like this.
Yeah, just guide me like a.
If you're going too long, I'm going to do this.
Air traffic control.
Signals, right?
So I mean, I want to preface this by saying that this is in no way ever been intended. Whenever I do share the story, it's not intended to evoke sympathy or, man, that poor guy. I don't look at it that way. It's just what it is. Every one of you listening has your own challenges, and no matter if you grew up in a mansion or in a foster home, you have this is life. Life is it throws things at us, and this is where my story was. This is what was thrown at me. So I came from an extremely impoverished and very volatile childhood, and by that I mean that I'm the youngest of 4, and the others are sisters. One is she took her life. She jumped to her death in New York City in '92, the year of the riots, because of part of what I'm getting ready to say. I did not know my father very well. I would visit him once a year, but I didn't get to know him till I got out of the Army. And actually, just now, he's 84, and I'm just now starting to really get to know him because he didn't grow up. I didn't grow up with a father. I had a mother, and remember that I was born in '62, so the Vietnam War was raging in my younger years, and the '60s were happening. And in my house, my mother was one that. She absolutely despised cops. Cops were pigs, and when one died, she celebrated, and that's not an exaggeration. She hated the military. I used to get beaten, and I mean beaten, if she caught me out playing soldier. Oh, you want to be a baby killer? And of course, what did I do? I joined the Army and became a cop. I mean, it's fun enough to know that everything she hated turned out to be the good thing. So, I grew up with a lot of Hell's Angels in the house, a lot of those outlaw bikers, let's say. And literally, as a little kid, I was terrified of these people.
Where was it that you grew up exactly?
Well, I was born in Glendale, but this house I'm talking about, I still remember the address. It was 3726 and a half West 104th Street. That's the address. And that was in Inglewood, California. So it was between Doty and Crenshaw, and it was not, the best of neighborhoods. And so I was literally living in terror as a very small kid, because you'd get up in the morning or in the night to go to the bathroom, and there'd be a guy rebuilding a Harley inside the house, and the house was a disaster. And he'd be like, "Hey, little fucker, hand me that wrench," And I'd seen them fighting. I'd seen what they did. My sister was molested by them many, many times. Just terrible things.
Was there drugs, alcohol?
Oh, absolutely. No, the house was a drug den. And my mom and all 3 of my sisters were alcoholics. My mom is no longer with us, but she was a raging alcoholic. Her mom was an alcoholic. I don't drink to this day because I decided after I got older that I don't want to be that way. It's genetic, I think. So I don't do that. But yeah, so in the house, the first time I ever remember seeing a police officer, and it changed my life, to be honest with you, there was probably about 6 of these guys in there.
How old were you?
I was probably about 6 years old when this thing happened, and I don't remember what the story was, but the door came flying off the hinges, and in come all these Inglewood cops, and it scared the crap out of me. But before that, these were loud, whiskey drinking, fighting guys, punching walls. And when these cops came in, it looked like a warrant as I look back on it. Somebody must have had a warrant. And because at that time, they had come to my house throughout the years after that, looked for draft guys that were draft dodgers that my mom was hiding and shit like that. But they come in there, and here these huge bikers with long hair and tattoos and arms this big that I was terrified of. They saw these cops, and when the cops were telling us turn around and shut the fuck up, they turned around and shut the fuck up. And as a little kid, I think I was younger. What did I say? I was 6.
Yeah.
No, I had to be 5 or younger. I was looking up at these guys, probably I'm not even 5 yet, because I was in my pajamas looking at these what looked like giants to me. And I realized I made a connection that these terrifying guys were actually afraid of them, which blew my mind. I couldn't believe it. You know, they would grabbing them around. Somebody said something, a cop slapped them and said, "Hey, you know, I don't need to hear anything from you." And they're searching them down. And the real thing that hit me was, in a world of chaos and violence, and I'd seen stabbings and drugs and crap you wouldn't believe, these cops come in and their uniforms were so neat and their hair wasn't long and their badges and the leather was squeaking. And something very much like this went through my head. I don't know who these people are or where they come from. I was just sitting there with my mouth hanging open. But I'm going to do that. I want to go to where they're from, and I want to be those guys. And that's really where the seed was planted.
Wow,
And then,
4 years old.
Yeah, I had to be about 4 as I look back. There's been so many things that happened to me that I screwed up on the age. It had to be about 4 because I wasn't even 100% sure what cops were, to be honest with you. So it was pretty young.
It makes me think you're looking at them like they're superheroes.
Oh no, absolutely.
Yeah.
I never forgot it, Kathy, because years later, and anyone that worked with me used to know that here goes again, man. If you got a cigarette, smoke it. Mike's going to be busy. Because when I'd kick through front doors going in, and I'd see little snot-nosed, dirty, impoverished Mikes sitting there looking at me the same way, I never missed an opportunity after everything was code 4 to sit down with this guy and tell him these stories. Tell him that, you know what, always love your mother, but you don't have to imitate your mother. You don't have to go the same direction. You know, there's ways out of this, you know, and who knows how many it resonated with. But later on, to get back to what you're talking about, the gangster that saved my life.
Oh, yeah. So that's what I've been waiting to hear. You said that you wanted to title this "A Gangster Saved My Life."
Yes. Yeah. And I want to get a little bit of background. So yeah. My mom ultimately became a prostitute in Inglewood and a drug addict and blah, blah, blah. A lot of about it. Well, we were house sitting for somebody in just on the outskirts of Watts, which is, this is an African-American community. And there were just a few in those days. This is much later than the story I just told you. So now I'm probably about 10 years old, maybe, about 10 or 11. And I was riding I borrowed my niece or my cousin's bicycle, and we were house sitting over here. And I rode to the store to get my mom a newspaper. And on the way back, a big African-American guy, to me, looked like a giant. He just punched me in the face, knocked me off the bike, and jumped on the bike and took off. And I was terrified, you know, so I ran all the way back to this house that we were staying at while my mother's mother was on vacation. And my mom was, of course, drunk. This is, you know, early evening. And as the night went on, and there's vulgar language, I apologize for ahead of time because this is how it went down. She was so angry, and, you know, she was very condescending. You know, I was a loser and you're a fucking piece of shit and you're never going to amount to anything. And I wish I didn't have you. And, you know, standard happy home. And she was getting furious that somebody took that bike, and she's going to have to explain it. So after she's ripped, she says, "Get your ass up. We're going to go take a look for this bike." Well, now it's 11:30 at night, and we're driving into Watts, which is a dangerous area if you're in those days. If you're a drunk white lady with a little skinny white kid sitting next to you, stopping groups of clearly gang members, you know, Crips, and ask. So she's driving through looking for this bike, and she's getting madder and madder and madder. And at one point, we come down a street. Now it's well after midnight. And there is just a sea of what I learned later because of the area. I ended up policing the same area, oddly enough. But there was a group of Crips, and these were hardcore gang members. In those days, it was khakis, creased khakis and T-shirts, a lot of jerry curl and standing around in just big groups. And here comes my mom, and she pulls up, and the windows are down, and they circle the car. "Hey, what are you doing here? What are you looking for?" You know, and she says, "Have you guys seen a bike?" And no, and they were getting a little froggy. I mean, you know, they were very shocked that this lady was doing this. And finally she says, "Can you believe this? Sorry about this. I apologize. Can you believe this little pussy let somebody take his cousin's bike?" You know, and I'm kind of thinking, where's she going with this? And then she gets herself madder, and the heads are sticking in the window, and I'm terrified. I just want to get out of there. I'm like, "Mom, let's go. And she goes, "You know what? open the door. It's unlocked. Open the door and pull this little pussy out and show him what a real ass whipping's like. And even though I knew my mom was out of control, I never thought that that would happen. And I couldn't, my mind couldn't handle it. And the door opens and all these arms come in. They pull me out of the car and there's yelling and noise.
And what are you thinking?
Well, I almost went into like some kind of a trauma thing. Because it was like slow motion to me. And I remember falling back on the street and I'm looking up and the door, one of them closed the door and my mom took off. And when those, now this is hard for me to talk about because I don't want to start crying either. But this is kind of scary to me even now. I feel sorry for the dude, the little kid, not me, but it's hard to believe that that was me. But those lights disappearing was the first time that I truly, truly accepted my death. I knew that I was going to die. And it was such a weird thing because I remember thinking, I wonder how much it's going to hurt me before I finally die, because I couldn't believe, there's no way out of this. There's no coming out of it. I'm on the street. She goes out of sight. This crowd is coming in and they're yelling and screaming and it's just chaos. And all of a sudden, I mean, you couldn't write this in a movie script. You just couldn't write this. If you remember the guy on the, I don't know, I'm not good with actors' names, but he looked like the guy on the Green Mile, some big OG original gangster for the non-gang people. But arms as big as my body. I hear this voice, man, back the fuck off, and I sense something's changing as I wait to die. Something changed. And these C parts and the biggest dude I've seen, just this hardcore gang member, man. And he stands over and says, man, get the fuck up, little man, get up. And people are still saying, get back off, man. Get away from him. And they're like, yo, man. Hey. And he says, get up, little man. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. Is there a chance I might survive this? My head started trying to catch up with reality. And he pulls me up and he starts walking. He's yelling at them to stay back, get away from this guy. And now he says to me, hey, man, why'd your mom do that to you? And he said it in street talk, hey, man, why'd your moms do that to you, And I didn't even know how to talk. I was just crying. Like, I don't know, because I'm a pussy. I think that's what I said to him. He said, man, that wasn't right, man. Your mom shouldn't have done that to you. And then I realized, holy crap, this guy has like empathy. I didn't know the word empathy, but I could feel that he really cared, which I couldn't believe. I thought I was going to die that night. So he starts walking. He says, where do you live? And I didn't know the address because it wasn't my house. It was my grandmother's house. He's walking with me in the middle of the night and he's talking to me like a dad almost. And it's a long way away. We had to go west of Crenshaw, and anyone that knows the area, that'll tell you kind of where I was at. I'm sorry. No, it was about 2 blocks east of Crenshaw. We make a right and there's the house. And I think it's done. And even though I know my mom's in there because I can see the car, I'm happy to be home and out of that scenario. But he says, hey, you got no father, you got no brothers. Somebody needs you to teach you how to handle yourself, man. And I didn't know I was just agreeing with everything. And he says, you know what? I'm going to be here tomorrow at 9:00 in the morning, man. And I'm going to show you how to handle yourself. Somebody has to teach you. Now, even at that age, I didn't really think it was going to happen. I just wanted to get away, just stop everything. That night was overload for me. And he left and I go in. Would you believe the doorbell rang at 9:00 and my mom opens the door and here's this guy. He showed up. He asked me to take him to the backyard. He spent, 2 hours teaching me the fundamentals of fighting. And I mean, I didn't know anything. I was raised by a mom and 3 sisters. And I had no idea how to do anything except run and sneak home from school a different direction every day because this gang was trying to get me and that guy wanted to kick my ass. I had 100 ways home from school to avoid getting beat up. And he's teaching me the fundamentals. And he said he was going to come back the next day. I believed him. And he did. He showed up the next day. And that day, my mom, in a rare moment, actually was sober, which was weird. You didn't see that very much. And she was a mean drunk. But in the middle of all this in the backyard, it's probably the nicest thing my mother ever did that I can remember. She comes out with plates with sandwiches for him and I. And I sat there with what I didn't know at the time, but realized later was a hardcore guy that had done time. And I'll end it with this. Fast forward to later on, I'm in a black and white driving in that same area. And man, I used to look at that street and I would think to myself, what I would give if I just knew his name. Because I look at that guy as an angel that truly came into my life and saved me, man. Maybe not from death, but saved me from something that could have changed me for life. And I never forgot that guy. And you know what? As you know, I ended up working right when I got off probation. I wanted to work South Bureau Crash, which is the gang police, and I was working in the projects in Watts. I was assigned to Jordan Downs, Nixon Gardens, Imperial Course. That's what I did, and we set records there. And I don't mean arrest records, which we set those too. You can look on YouTube. I've got old screwed up video because it was VHS. The news covered it. My partner and I had the very first neighborhood watch meeting that ever took place in the projects. We started a basketball game between the Grape Street Crips and the cops. We put that together, man. I never forgot that gang members and street guys, hardcore guys that had a life of crime are human beings. And there's not many things, I can name them, that a person can do that I will not forgive them for. You know, I have talked to these people. You know it. Nobody just got in the backseat of my car and went to jail. They all, whether I fought with them or not, I would want to know their life story, how they got to where they're at, what their plans were. And I can't tell you how many times, countless times, people said to me, man, you know, I was ready to kill you 2 hours ago. And, you know, now I'm sitting here crying and you're hugging me, you know, in the booking cage. Because people are people, man. And we all come from things. We got to process things differently. And that goes for Crips that save little white boys that are laying there ready to die and accepting their death at 9 or 10 years old. And it goes for police officers who jump out of a car and have to make a goddamn decision in a nanosecond. And that same decision can get bifurcated and torn apart for the next 2 years in court. And everybody can throw in what they would have done and what they would have thought. And, well, hey, what about this option? And I've been in shootings. And unfortunately, I've had to take a life. And I know what those things that go through. And I know the stomach acid and the crap that happens when these things happen. But it's the profession. And if there's not people willing, you know, to do that, I've said it before to people I talk to, you know, when you hear that stick break in the backyard at 2 o'clock in the morning or the door come open and you dial 911, the Army's not coming, the Marines aren't coming. It's some cop that's going to show up and hopefully he's an honest cop. But I'll tell you what, it's 99.9% of the time, it's somebody who is willing to meet whatever horror is on the other side of that door, and he ain't got no clue. Cops are always behind the curve. The bad guys know what they're going to do. The cop doesn't. And this is why people misunderstand us so much. We walk up to a person, all he did was run a light. But I offer you this as a listener. When you're sitting there and the police officer lights you up, you know in your heart that you just ran a light. But he don't. For all he knows, you ran a light because you're coming away from a murder. These happen all the time. Maybe you just shot somebody, did a drive-by. Maybe you're a cop hater. Maybe you're this, maybe you're that. And you're going to make the move, and he's going to have to pass you, catch up, and pass you if he wants to survive. So mistakes do get made. And mistakes get made on the battlefield in war. Mistakes get made in family marriages. Mistakes get made in the doctor's office. Surgeons cut the wrong artery, and cops kill the wrong people. Not in this case, because George Floyd was murdered. And I hope that this cop lives long enough for somebody to figure out what the hell that was all about. But I'm telling you, when you go against your protectors as a society, and this is my fear in terms of what's happening now, a society that will turn against those willing to come to their aid will lose eventually, because I already fear it's too late. I have inside knowledge because I talk to cops that are active duty. Recruitment is down almost across the country. And if you think it was down before Mr. Floyd's murder, when good people no longer want to wear that badge, it's going to have to be worn by somebody. And if you think police are bad now because people tell you they're bad, Political people say the cops are racist. The rappers say the cops are racist. The Hollywood people tell you the cops are racist. And if you really buy into that they're all just racist, think about it. Racism is painting with a broad brush, and people don't like it, but it's perfectly okay to paint cops with a broad brush of being racist. It's a double standard that's going to bite society in the ass, because when you only have the lower echelon of people willing to put on that badge, you haven't seen corruption or crime like you're going to see. I don't wish it upon society, but this is just natural, the ebb and flow and the natural outcome of when you have people that are good cops that are going to go out there and willing to give their life, who say, you know what, maybe I'll join the fire department instead, or maybe I'll go open my own business. Why? You know, when cops got killed, there was a time when people felt bad about it. Now cops have to go to these calls not knowing what they're going into, knowing that if they get killed, there's a segment of the population, good, the pig got what he deserved. That's not from their experience. It's because it's being pumped into their heads by people with other multiple agendas. And I just ask people, if you're not capable or not willing to think for yourself about these issues, or you don't want your family and friends to turn against you, almost every department that I've ever heard of offers a ride-along program. And I challenge everyone who is negative, has negative feelings about cops. I challenge you, once the dust settles and if we get back to any kind of normal, contact your local police department. We did it all the time. People did it all the time. And you fill out the form and go on a Friday or Saturday and try and pick the worst area you can find and go ride with them for 4 hours, or go ride with them for 8 hours, and see what it's like when you have to make a decision based on knowing nothing. Only the guy in the car knows he's got a gun in his lap. Only the guy in the car knows he's got a body in the trunk. Just mathematically, it's almost impossible to not have a certain number of mistakes. And I didn't mean to go off on
it's
that.
okay. And Mike, something that I want to piggyback on something that you just said. You're completely correct. We as cops or ex-cops, we never know, what's behind the door, who's in the car, what they just did. And I think that's a big missing link in people's understanding of what we do. And, that being said, it's not far-fetched. I can't count on 2 hands, or 2 hands and 2 feet, or even more. Hundreds where it was a scenario. I'm not saying always a dead body in the trunk, but yeah, there's been that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Or knocking on that door and just that anxiety inside, like, okay, God, what's behind this door? That feeling, because you just don't know, because the last door that you knocked on, for, a domestic violence situation turned out to not so good. Or maybe it turned out not so good for somebody else. And I think that people really underestimate the amount of stress involved and the amount of times where we really are faced with a life and death situation. People, I know they watch cop shows, and I'm not talking everybody, but a lot of people, I'm sure you've gotten this. In 10 years of law enforcement, did you ever pull your gun? I pulled my gun every night.
Yeah,
my life was in danger. So yeah, I pulled my gun. Oh, you did? Well, we're not stopping, we're not dealing with the good. We're dealing with those that are in their worst situation at that moment. I don't want to say bad, because, there's good people that get pulled over too. And they have, they're in a situation that now they're faced with, the police. But I think people really don't believe that this is all day, every day, day in, day out, year after year. And it's a reality. And so I'm glad that you said that. I think it's important to know where, where the law enforcement officer is coming from when they do stop you. And I will tell you, I'm so thankful you shared your story. And I want to have another episode with you, because I know I have so many more questions for you. And I know we're limited to an hour. However, your story, I love it. I love to hear, I don't love to hear what you went through as a child. It just breaks my heart. And I will tell you that I have worked with many different cops, and I would say the majority, not all of them, the majority are really trying to make a difference, spending the time, talking to the people, where are you coming from, trying to help the youth turn their life around. I have seen it over and over and over, buying food for somebody, you know, the homeless man, giving them money on a regular basis, not just every now and then. I've seen so much good. And I feel at this point in time, I wish people could just say, you know, although we can stereotype and say, yeah, we see that cops have this, you know, certain, you know, way that they are, I guess, you know, but at the same time, they're not, most of the people got into this, into law enforcement because they had a heart to help others. Maybe not as, they didn't go through maybe the situations that you went through, but they went through something, or they just decided that that was their life purpose, to put their life on the line every single day and leave their family at home around the Christmas tree on Christmas Day while they're coming to your, you know, to your aid. So I appreciate you sharing that story. And how do people get in touch with you if they want to talk to you, or and do you have any parting words?
Yeah, I mean, I'm almost hesitant to even drop the YouTube channel because it's gone through such a metamorphosis. But I do have a YouTube channel, and that's LMS Tactical. It's all capital L, capital M, capital S, capital T, and LMS Tactical stands for Last Man Standing Tactical, which I had a firearms business, and it used to be a firearms channel. But it's gotten political. I've gotten into some South African things, and I'm a pretty opinionated guy. I am always willing to change my opinions, but I voice them. My email address is airborne, AIRBORNE 80, airborne80 at Gmail. And yeah, that's the year I went through jump school to become a paratrooper in the Army. So it's easy to remember, airborne80 at gmail.com. And that's pretty, you know, anybody that wants additional information, you know, hit me up. And I'm not a shy guy. And I think that every one of us has a story to tell. And if we just listen to each other, you know, there's an awful lot to learn. And I'm so glad we talked about this whole police thing, because I was going to mention you said something that made me think of, oh God, what was it? The way cops are. And one of the things, I think, profiling, you know, that's a thing that comes up a lot. And I think there's a lot of unrealistic expectations of the new cop, the cop that we want, which there's no profiling. And my counter to that, as an example, is we have to be realistic. People have been profiling since the first guy came out of one cave and looked at the next guy coming out of another cave. He sized him up. Is this guy a threat? Is he going to come and take my T-Rex bone? You know, when somebody walks behind you in the parking lot, you turn around, you're profiling him. Do I feel a threat? If the guy's wearing a shirt that says I am a wanted felon or I'm a gang member, you might handle things differently. So you can't take away natural things. I mean, when you talked about how many times there were things in the trunk, maybe not bodies or whatever, that's because no matter what we call it, we can all pretend that we don't profile. 99% of good police work is profiling, and it's not profiling on race. I mean, I told you I worked in Watts. I mean, you know, so the only two white people in Watts at that time were my partner and I, but people would really believe we were just stopping them because they're black. And I used to say, if I worked in Chinatown, I guess they could legitimately say I'm stopping them because they're Chinese. But the truth is, you know, society has to give a little bit of wiggle room and be realistic in terms of what we expect from our cops. You know, if you look in a car next to you and people are sweating and they're not looking at you and there's a golf club sticking out of the ignition, you might want your police to turn around and look at that car, because I just profiled. I got a feeling that car's stolen. They're not looking at me, and the ignition's got a golf club sticking out of it. Let's go look at it. You know, so I just ask that people be a little bit more understanding and not expect the unrealistic, utopian society where police officers walk around holding balloons and nobody gets hurt. Unfortunately, we live in a world where we need some kind of something to stand between. You know, I'll end my little speech with this. The next time you're driving and you come to a traffic light on a busy highway, you see cars stopped on the 4-way or 2 ways, letting traffic go. And there's no police around at that moment, let's just say. People stop for a light that turned a different color because inherently we all want to have order versus chaos. This is how an intelligent civilization advances and lives, so we don't have car crashes and burning cars all over the place. A light turns red. Now, every now and again, somebody will go through the red light, or maybe a little late, and then the cop lights them up, and there's a penalty, and we don't have to like it. Maybe there's a better way to do it. But most of the time we don't even need cops to be there because most people are good people and they're going to stop and they're going to follow the rules and but there's a segment that doesn't, and that's where the police come in. And when police get corrupt or police do things out of line, or in this case they murder somebody, they need to be hammered above and beyond the normal penalty because they were entrusted. I told my probationers, when you wear that badge, it's not Mike wearing a badge. It's not me now in a uniform. I'm representing the city who trusts me to go out here and do these things. So it's not personal. When somebody says, fuck the police, they don't know me. It's not me. They don't know who I am.
Don't take it personal.
Yeah, don't take it personal. They're just mad at the system, and the system is changeable, but it can't be done at the scene of the arrest. You get stopped and you haven't done anything, I suggest that the one way to guarantee you're not going to be killed by the police is to just cooperate, not saying you agree with it. But the time for the trial is not at the scene. Maybe the cop's a nutcase. Maybe he's like this guy, he's a psycho, or maybe he's having a bad day, or maybe he's having a meltdown. But if he does something wrong, you don't want to get hurt. You don't have to have everybody running, sticking phones in the face and telling them all this shit to try to escalate it. Let it go through its process, and then request an investigation, make a complaint. If they don't take your complaint, go above that. There's recourse. Recourse is not fast. No good system is fast, whether it's an internal affairs investigation or this court case that's going to drag out for the next year or two with the killing of Mr. Floyd. But that's the place, that's a way to ensure your safety, is to exercise the legal ways. And if you don't like the laws, petition to get these laws changed. If you think it's happening with marijuana, when there was a time when if you had one pot seed, you went to jail and on a serious crime. I don't know of a cop that would arrest somebody with marijuana now. I mean, to be honest with you, so it takes time.
It takes time, 100%, but it also takes being self-aware and also being educated and informed. So you said petition to make change, and I say petition to make change, vote. But don't vote for what everyone's telling you to vote for.
Yes.
That can get us in trouble. Take the time, do the research, vote appropriately for yourself and what you want to see happen. When I say change starts with self-awareness, be self-aware of your own prejudice, your own biases, your own opinions, and realize that, we get frustrated. I see society's frustrated. They're acting out, and by looting and, all the violence that's gone over the past week, right?
Yes.
However, a lot of people feel like their hands are tied. I can't change the world. I can't do anything. So I'm gonna protest, which is fine. But it's not okay, again, to commit crimes and crimes against people and to injure them. And I know over 1,000 officers have been injured or killed in the last week, over 1,000. And that breaks my heart. They're trying to maintain or some type of law and order. And that's their job, like you said. But I feel like, you can be a part of the problem or you can be a part of the solution. Yeah, and that starts with you personally. I'm choosing myself to be a part of the solution. I'm going to educate myself. I'm going to vote. I'm going to decide, what is important, what's not. And if everybody does that and doesn't listen to what their mom said, their dad said, their friend said, social media said, the stuff that people believe and get riled up about on social media is absolutely ridiculous. I'm going to get on a tangent now. I taught my kids, they're young adults now at a very young age. They come home and tell me something. You know what? Where did you hear that? Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do research. I'm going to show you how to form your own opinion, because we're herd animals. We want to follow a herd. We follow, what everybody says we should do, like, let's just be a duck walking with the rest of the ducks. This isn't the time to be a duck. This is the time to think for yourself, do the right thing. Change starts within. It's never too late to change. And I encourage everybody to challenge yourself to becoming informed, to empower yourself through knowledge. I'm going to tell you, knowledge is intrinsic, meaning that no one can take it away from you. They can take your car, they can take your freedom. If you're arrested, they can take your money, they can take your wife, they can take your girlfriend, they can take your kids, they can take anything. But one thing somebody cannot do is take away the knowledge that you gain. And that knowledge is power, and power creates change, and it all comes from within. So I thank you, Mike, for coming on. And I know I have so many things that started coming into my mind that are great topics for a conversation for another time. But everybody, I thank you so much for tuning in to the Love You, Live You podcast. And everybody stay safe, do the right thing. Remember, change starts within. Have a good day. Bye. Thank you for listening.